The rain drizzled over the bustling city, turning the grey sidewalks into a mosaic of reflections. Damien Carter, the billionaire CEO of Carter Enterprises, sat in the back seat of his black Rolls-Royce, his sharp gaze scanning the streets as his driver maneuvered through the late afternoon traffic. It was another long day at the office, another series of board meetings, profit reports, and high-stakes negotiations. But as the car slowed near a small coffee shop on the corner, something, or rather someone, caught his attention. A woman, soaked to the bone, struggled to shield two small children from the rain, huddling under a flimsy umbrella that had clearly seen better days. She held a paper bag in one hand, while pulling an old stroller with the other. Her clothes were modest but worn, her shoes barely holding together. Despite the exhaustion evident in her posture, she smiled down at her children as they excitedly pointed at the glowing display of a bakery window. And then, as Damien's eyes settled on her face, his breath caught in his throat. It was her. A name that he hadn't spoken in years surfaced in his mind. Elena Parker. His heart pounded against his ribs. He hadn't seen her in nearly a decade, yet the moment he laid eyes on her, memories he had fought to bury came rushing back. He was frozen in place, unable to believe what he was seeing. How had she ended up like this? The last time he had seen Elena, she had been full of life, with dreams so big they could swallow the world whole. She had been his first love, his only love, but she had disappeared from his life without a trace, leaving nothing behind but unanswered questions and a heartache that had never quite healed. Now she stood on a rain-soaked street, looking nothing like the fiery, ambitious girl he once knew. "Sir?" His driver, Michael, glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Is everything all right?" Damien barely registered the words. His grip tightened on the leather seat. "Pull over," he commanded. Michael hesitated. "Here? Now!" Damien snapped, his voice leaving no room for argument. The car rolled to a stop at the curb. Damien didn't wait for the driver to open his door. He stepped out into the rain, his expensive shoes splashing into a puddle. Eleanor was too distracted with her children to notice him at first. She crouched down, adjusting the jacket of her youngest, a boy who looked no older than 4. The older one, a girl, perhaps 7 or 8, tugged at Elena's sleeve. "Mommy, can we just look inside? Just for a second?" the girl pleaded. Eleanor sighed, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "Sweetheart, we don't have money for—" She stopped mid-sentence, because at that moment she felt a presence behind her. Slowly, she turned, and when her eyes met Damien's, the paper bag she was holding slipped from her fingers, the contents spilling onto the wet pavement. Her breath hitched. For a long moment neither of them spoke. "Elena," Damien finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena staggered back as if she had seen a ghost, her face drained of color. No, it can't be. But it was. Damien Carter, the man she had once loved, the man whose heart she had broken, the man who now stood before her, dressed in an expensive, tailored suit, looking at her as though he had seen a nightmare come to life. Her hands trembled as she bent down to gather the fallen groceries. "You shouldn't be here," she muttered, refusing to meet his gaze. Damien, however, wasn't about to let her slip away so easily. "Eleanor, what happened to you?" His voice was softer now, tinged with something that almost sounded like pain. "Where did you go?" She let out a shaky laugh, void of humor. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." She stiffened. He still had that same intensity in his voice, the same way of making the world disappear when he spoke. But she couldn't afford to fall into old habits. Not now. "We should go," she told her daughter. "Come on." Before she could escape, Damien spoke again. "Are they yours?" Elena froze. She didn't need to ask what he meant. She knew he was referring to her children. "Yes," she finally said, her voice barely audible. Something flickered in his eyes, something unreadable. "And their father?" Elena inhaled sharply. "That's none of your business." Damien clenched his jaw. "You disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation. And now I find you here, struggling to make ends meet. You don't think I deserve answers?" "I don't owe you anything," she whispered. The pain in her voice was unmistakable. Damien took a step closer, and she instinctively took a step back. "Then let me help," he said. "Whatever happened, whatever you've been through, I can fix it." Eleanor let out a bitter laugh. "You think money fixes everything, Damien. Not everything can be bought." "I don't want to buy anything," he said evenly. I just want to know what happened to you." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a brief moment the wall she had built around herself began to crack. But before anything else could be said, her son tugged at her coat. "Mommy, I'm cold." That single sentence shattered whatever moment had formed between them. Elena swallowed hard, then lifted her chin. "I have to go." Without another word, she took her children's hands and turned away. Damien watched as she disappeared down the street, his mind racing with questions. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just about bad luck or financial hardship. There was something else, something she wasn't telling him. And Damien Carter wasn't the kind of man to walk away without getting answers. Damien Carter was not a man who let things go. As his Rolls-Royce pulled away from the curb, his mind remained anchored to the image of Elena Parker standing in the rain, her clothes worn, her hands trembling, 2 children clinging to her side. Her children. A bitter taste settled in his mouth. He had spent the last 10 years focused on building an empire, expanding Carter Enterprises into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. He had convinced himself that the past didn't matter, that she didn't matter. But tonight proved otherwise. He pulled out his phone. "Michael," he called to his driver, "find out where she lives." Michael hesitated, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "Sir, are you sure that's—" "Do it." There was no room for negotiation. Michael gave a sharp nod before tapping on his GPS. Within minutes, Damien had an address, a run-down apartment complex on the outskirts of town. His gut twisted. Eleanor Parker, the girl who once dreamed of changing the world, was now barely surviving in a place that should be condemned. How had this happened? Damien clenched his jaw. He needed answers. Elena tucked the thin blanket around her children, pressing a gentle kiss to their foreheads. "Sweet dreams," she whispered. Her daughter, Lily, mumbled something incoherent before sinking deeper into sleep. Her son, Noah, was already gone, his tiny chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Elena exhaled, exhaustion weighing heavy on her shoulders. The apartment was silent, save for the distant hum of traffic outside. She turned toward the kitchen, where unopened bills lay scattered across the counter. The numbers blurred in front of her. Rent was due in 3 days. She didn't have enough. Her fingers tightened around the edges of a utility bill. The electricity company had already sent a final warning. If she didn't pay by the end of the week, they would cut the power. Her job as a cashier at the grocery store barely covered food and essentials. There was no extra money, no savings, no help. She had long accepted that this was her life now. But seeing Damien again, her knees weakened and she gripped the counter for support. She had prayed never to cross paths with him again, because the moment she saw him, all the pain she had buried came rushing back, raw and unhealed. His sharp grey eyes had searched her face with too many questions. What happened to you? Where did you go? He wouldn't stop there, he never did. Elena knew Damien too well. He was relentless. A soft knock at the door shattered the silence. Her body froze. No one came to visit. Ever. Cautiously she moved to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. A voice cut through the quiet. "Elena." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She turned the knob with trembling hands, and the door creaked open. Damien stood there, still in his tailored suit, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Elena broke the silence. "What are you doing here?" His eyes flickered past her, scanning the dimly lit apartment. "You live here?" he asked, voice tight. She crossed her arms. "That's none of your business." Damien exhaled sharply. "You think I can just walk away after seeing you like that?" She swallowed. "You should." His gaze hardened. "No." A storm of emotions brewed in his eyes. Anger, confusion, something else she couldn't name. "Elena, talk to me," he pressed. "What happened to you?" She stiffened. "I don't owe you an explanation." His voice dropped. "Did he hurt you?" Her stomach twisted. "What?" "The father of your kids." Elena flinched. Damien saw, his jaw clenched. "So that's it." She turned away. "You should leave." "I'm not going anywhere." Silence stretched between them. Damien took a careful step closer. "Are they mine?" Elena's breath caught. The question she had feared most. Her hands clenched into fists. "You don't get to ask that." "Tell me the truth." She shook her head. "It doesn't matter." His expression darkened. "It matters to me." Her voice wavered. "Why?" Damien ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Because you were everything to me, Elena, and one day you were just gone. No explanation, no goodbye. And now I find you like this? With 2 children? You think I can just walk away? Tears burned at the back of her eyes. She turned away, gripping the edge of the door for support. Damien's voice softened. Are they mine? Elena squeezed her eyes shut. She wanted to lie, to tell him no, but she couldn't. She had already taken so much from him. Her lips trembled, and then finally, yes, she whispered. The world went still. Damien inhaled sharply, as if the air had been knocked from his lungs. Shock, silence, then anger. You knew? His voice was low, dangerous. You knew and you kept them from me? Elena's throat tightened. It wasn't. I missed their first steps. His hands balled into fists. Their first words, their entire lives. Her vision blurred with tears. I was protecting them, she whispered. His laugh was bitter. From me? No, Damien, her voice cracked. From them. Confusion flashed in his eyes. Who? Eleanor swallowed hard. His family, the Carters, the powerful, ruthless empire Damien had been born into. The same people who had threatened her 10 years ago. If you love him, you'll leave. She had been terrified. They had made it clear. She would never be good enough for their son, and if she stayed, they would ruin her. And so, she ran. To protect herself, to protect their children. Damien's voice cut through the silence. Elena, what are you not telling me? She hesitated. If she told him the truth, he would go after them. He would burn his entire family to the ground, and she couldn't let that happen. So she forced a cold smile. It doesn't matter anymore. His jaw tensed. Like hell it doesn't. Damien, she whispered, please, let it go. His eyes met hers, filled with something raw. I can't. A tear slipped down her cheek, because she knew Damien Carter never let go, and now there was no turning back. Damien Carter never let go of something once it was his, and now, knowing that Elena had carried his children, without telling him, something inside him snapped. He couldn't walk away. He wouldn't. The revelation left his chest hollow, but beneath that emptiness, anger stirred, not at Elena, but at whatever had forced her to keep the truth from him. She was hiding something. He could see it in the way her fingers trembled, in the way her eyes darted away as if shielding him from a truth far worse than her disappearance, and Damien was going to find out what it was. Elena knew she had just set everything in motion. There was no turning back now. The look in Damien's eyes told her that he wouldn't rest until he uncovered everything she had tried so hard to keep buried. She should have been prepared for this moment. She should have known that Damien wouldn't just accept it and move on, but a part of her, a foolish, naive part, had hoped he would let it go, that he would see the life she had built for herself and walk away. She should have known better. Damien had never been the kind of man to back down from a fight, and now she had made the mistake of challenging him. Elena, his voice was dangerously soft. Tell me everything. She turned away, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter to steady herself. I already told you what matters. His footsteps echoed behind her, closing the distance between them. No, you told me part of the truth, but not all of it. Eleanor forced herself to take slow, even breaths. She could feel him behind her, his presence overwhelming, just like it always had been. A bitter smile tugged at her lips. You think you can just walk back into my life and demand answers? Yes. His voice was sharp, cutting through the tension like a blade. Because I deserve them. She squeezed her eyes shut. He was right. Damien deserved the truth. But telling him the truth meant opening doors that were meant to stay locked. And once those doors opened, there would be no shutting them again. Elena, his voice dropped an octave. What did my family do to you? Her entire body went rigid, and Damien saw it. His breath hitched, and suddenly, the anger in his eyes shifted. Understanding. They were involved, he murmured. She swallowed hard, her hands tightening on the counter. I see, he exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. So, they got to you before I could. Eleanor turned to face him, her chest rising and falling in quick succession. You were never supposed to find out. Damien let out a humorless laugh. Well, now I have. Silence stretched between them. Eleanor wanted to run, but Damien wasn't giving her an escape. His sharp gaze locked onto hers, his mind already piecing together the puzzle. My father, he murmured. It was him, wasn't it? Her throat tightened. Damien's father, Charles Carter, had always been a force to be reckoned with. Cold, ruthless, a man who would crush anything that threatened the Carter empire. And Elena, she had been a threat, a poor girl with nothing to offer, nothing but Damien's heart. She had been foolish to believe they could ever be together, and Charles had made sure she understood that. Elena, Damien's voice was no longer demanding. It was quiet, careful, as if he already knew the answer but needed her to confirm it. She met his gaze, the weight of her past pressing down on her like a steel cage. Yes, she whispered, it was your father. Damien's entire body went still. It shouldn't have surprised him. His father had always treated emotions as weaknesses, especially love. Damien had spent his entire life living under the man's expectations, but this was unforgivable. His jaw clenched. What did he do? Eleanor hesitated. Does it matter? Damien's hands curled into fists. It does if he took you away from me. She let out a hollow laugh. He didn't just take me away, Damien. He destroyed me. Damien felt something inside him shatter. Elena turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. I was young, naive. I thought we could make it work, no matter what. But your father, he made sure I understood that I was never going to be enough for you. Damien took a sharp breath. What did he do, Elena? His voice was cold now, controlled, but she could hear the fury beneath the surface. She hesitated, and then she spoke the words she had been holding in for 10 years. He paid me to leave. A heartbeat of silence. Damien's entire body went rigid. What? Elena exhaled shakily. He gave me a check, a blank check, told me to write whatever amount I wanted. Damien's hands trembled. And you took it? She flinched. I tore it apart. His breath caught. I told him I didn't want his money, she continued, her voice raw. That I loved you, that I didn't need anything else. Damien swallowed hard. She had fought for them, but it hadn't been enough. He laughed in my face, she whispered. And then he told me exactly what he would do if I stayed. Damien's heart pounded. What did he say? Her voice wavered. That he would ruin me. That he would take everything. My family. My future. And if I stayed long enough to give birth to your children, she hesitated, her breath shaky. He would take them too. A wave of nausea hit Damien. His father had threatened their children, their unborn children. His stomach turned. That son of a... I was terrified, Damien. Elena's voice broke. So, I did what he wanted. I disappeared. Damien's hands shook as he forced himself to breathe. His father had done this. He had stolen everything from him. His love, his children. 10 years of their lives. Damien closed the distance between them in 2 strides. Elena stiffened as he cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. You should have told me. His voice was rough with emotion. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I couldn't. Damien's thumb brushed against her skin. You're not alone anymore. She inhaled sharply. Damien, I swear to you, Elena. His voice was a vow. I will fix this. She searched his face, her walls crumbling. And for the first time in 10 years, she let herself believe it. Damien had never felt rage like this before. He had spent his entire life under his father's rule, living up to impossible expectations, molding himself into the heir Charles Carter wanted. But this was unforgivable. His father had stolen 10 years from him. 10 years. Years that could have been spent watching his children grow, waking up beside Elena, building the life they were supposed to have. And now Damien was going to take back what was his. Elena sat on the worn-out couch in her small apartment, watching him as he paced like a predator ready to strike. Damien, she said softly, but he shook his head. I'm fixing this, he said, his voice firm. And I'm starting with him. Elena's heart pounded. Damien, no, you don't understand what he's capable of. His gaze snapped to hers. And he doesn't understand what I'm capable of when someone takes away the people I love. Her breath caught. The people I love. But there was no time to dwell on that. Damien grabbed his phone and dialed a number. Get me a meeting with my father. Now, he ordered. The Carter estate was the same as Damien remembered. Cold, lifeless. The mansion loomed over him, a symbol of everything his father had built and everything he had destroyed. He stepped inside, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. The butler barely had time to announce him before Damien stormed into his father's office. Charles Carter sat behind a massive oak desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He barely looked up. "You could have called," Charles said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "But I assume you came here to throw a tantrum instead." Damien's blood boiled. "You threatened Elena. You forced her to leave me." Charles sighed, setting down his drink. "Ah, so she finally told you the truth." Damien clenched his fists. "You stole my family from me." His father leaned back, unfazed. "I did what needed to be done. She was never going to fit into this world, Damien." "That wasn't your choice to make," Damien growled. Charles tilted his head. "Do you really think you would have succeeded with her? A grocery store cashier, a single mother? She would have dragged you down just like I predicted." Something inside Damien snapped. "I have 2 children, Dad." His voice was ice cold. "2 children you robbed me of, and you think I should thank you?" Charles didn't flinch. "You have an empire to run, a legacy to uphold." Damien let out a bitter laugh. "An empire? You mean your empire? The one built on manipulation and control?" Charles sighed. "You've always been emotional, Damien. That's why you'll never be the man I am." Damien's jaw tightened. "You're right. I will never be like you, and I thank God for that every day." He took a step closer, eyes burning. "I'm done living by your rules," he said. "From this moment on, I do things my way." Charles chuckled. "And what exactly does that mean?" Damien smirked. "It means I'm walking away from this family, from you." A flicker of surprise crossed Charles' face. "I built everything you have," Charles reminded him. "And I can build something better," Damien shot back. "Without you." Silence stretched between them. For the first time in his life, Damien had the upper hand. Charles exhaled sharply. "And what do you plan to do?" Damien smiled. "I'm going to marry the woman you tried to destroy, and I'm going to give my children the life they deserve, without a Carter name attached to them." Charles's face darkened. "Damien..." But Damien turned and walked away, and this time he wasn't coming back. Damien stood outside Elena's apartment, the weight of his decision lifting from his shoulders. He had walked away from his past. Now he was ready to walk toward his future. He knocked. Eleanor opened the door, eyes wide with worry. "What happened?" Damien stepped inside, cupping her face in his hands. "It's over," he said softly. She searched his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I cut ties with him, with all of it. The company, the legacy, everything he used to control me." Elena's lips parted. "Damien, are you sure?" He nodded. "All I want is you and the kids. That's all I've ever wanted." A single tear slipped down her cheek. "Say it again," she whispered. He smiled. "I want you, Elena." Her walls collapsed, and for the first time in 10 years she let herself believe she could have this. She threw herself into his arms, and he caught her, holding her so tightly she thought they might never let go. "I love you," she whispered. His breath hitched, and then he kissed her. 6 months later, the sun shone brightly over the vineyard, casting a golden glow over the rolling hills. The small wedding ceremony was intimate, just close friends and family, the family they chose. Elena stood in front of Damien in a simple yet elegant white dress, her hands trembling slightly as she held his. "You sure you want to do this?" she teased. "I come with 2 kids, you know." Damien smirked. "And I come with a lot of baggage. Guess we're even." She laughed, and the sound was the best thing he had ever heard. The officiant smiled. "Do you, Damien Carter, take Elena Parker to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Damien held her gaze. "I do." "And do you, Elena Parker, take Damien Carter to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Tears filled her eyes. "I do. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Damien didn't hesitate. He kissed her like he had waited 10 years to do it, because he had. Cheers erupted around them, but all Damien could focus on was Elena, the woman who had been taken from him, the woman he fought for, the woman he would never lose again. Their children ran up to them, hugging their legs. "We're a real family now?" Lily asked, eyes wide with hope. Damien knelt to their level, his throat tightening. "We've always been a real family," he whispered. "But now, it's forever." Tears filled Elena's eyes as she knelt beside him, wrapping their children in a warm embrace. And as Damien held them close, he knew he had finally won the only battle that ever mattered. Love had won.